It's the Awake Space with Laurie Rivers. I'm your host, here to help you with some inspiration to get those aspirations out into the world. Well, we've got a lot happening this week, and I judged the format a little bit. I think you're going to like it. I have been feeling inspired as we move forward with this energy that we're living through. And I know it's easy to go, my God, the world's on fire, and it is. And at the same time, if we think a little different, move to the side, look from a bird's eye view, take things from the present moment to the present moment with an eye to a sustainable future, we really can be the change we want to see in the world. I know it's hard when we see these good for nothing scoundrels out there making these awful decisions and being horrible and cruel. But you see, they want us to feel defeated. And that's not what we're going to do. We've got a cosmic rift coming up this week, and there's ways to navigate it. That Aquarius full moon packs a punch. And you know, I'm not one to get all excited and say, this was a rare event. But it kind of is. It isn't often that the moon is conjunct Pluto in opposition to Jupiter. You know, full moons are always when the sun and moon are in opposition. And with Jupiter conjunct the sun and the moon conjunct Pluto, that packs a wallop. But it can be exactly the kind of force necessary to shatter a crystal cave and allow the next view of a potential reality to come into view, to be illuminated, because that is something full moons do. They don't just release, they also open up what we can see differently. It illuminates our paths. And if you're in the Awake Space community this week before the 29th, I will do a live stream for magazine subscribers and up. We're going to talk about the full moon and really how to navigate that energy. And for other supporters, what we're doing is we're going to talk about how to navigate some of the sludge. In this episode, we're going to do some Q&A from our magazine subscribers, which is everybody at the $15 level and up. And we have some doozies in there. It's probably going to end up being a two-parter with part 2 in the Awake Space community, because I think this podcast would end up way too long if I answered all of those really good questions, including looking at the DSA chart and how, will the DSA get any traction? And there's some interesting energy in regards to that with the U.S. Constitution. And I want to thank Jade Minty Fresh for that question and sending me down a rabbit hole. So that'll probably go into Patreon only if you're a patron. In the Awake Space Lounge, I put a link to a live stream I did January 11th, 2021, where I went through the U.S. Constitution chart, which I see as the nation's birth chart. And I explain all of that in there. It's only 29 minutes long. If you missed my putting that link into the chat, we've got such an active chat. I'll make a post about it this week, and you can look into the old vault. Another segment I'm bringing in new is the Ralph Report. Ralph is my archivist, and man, Ralph is on it. So on it. We'll put out the what I got right in July, both from the year ahead that I did last year in June and then revised in December. I did it way back in 2025, 2026. So we'll put all of those in and what the accuracy rating is. And today I'm going to read just a few of the hits from last week's What's in the Headlines and from the 2026 year ahead that I did last year. All supporting community members are able to access the 2026 year ahead. And remember, I don't just give predictions. I actually help you prepare for the months ahead. So you still got August, September, October, November, and December you can review and be ready for when it comes to weather, politics, economy, all of that fun stuff. We're going to start this off talking about what's coming up in August. I'm going to end with the full moon because it's a doozy. All right, it's a doozy, and I want you to be soothed and ready for it because it's electrifying, So there we go. It's electrifying. Think the Grease song. I honestly think secrets are going to be revealed, but I'll read from the 2026 year ahead slides, and you can get my commentary from last year by watching the video if you're in the Awake Space community. So what did I rate back in 2025? August sees issues with publications. This could be medical and scientific journals. We could see, and issues can be good, issues can be bad. There could be new science news. There could be issues with accessing that news. It's highlighted. We could see new media attempt to get started. And by new, I mean new. It could be a new platform. It could be a new app. It could be a new journal. It could be a new channel. It's something new may get kicked off. We could hear about new releases of music and fashion. Could be independent artists and music take off as the public resists multinational corporations and private equity funds. Like the industries are being rattled. And so indies have a good shot right now. It could also be the results of boycotts. The second week of August could see a big wind, storms, arsons, and fires on public land. Could see really warm ocean temperatures and issues with currents. Rising sea levels or high heat indices or both and these will be in the news. Scientists could come out and protest. There could be an important court case, and this could be international. That is a landmark for environmentalists. World powers continue to be in conflict, but populations are refusing participation in greater numbers. We could see issues with the EU, NATO, Russia, and the United States. Public is not cool with all the shenanigans, but the governments are pushing for greater conflict. And that's exactly what it looks like as we sit in the present moment as things start to spill over. We can see issues with oil tankers, pipelines, and movement of raw materials of fossil fuels and other minerals at issue. We could see a blockade or a dispute with ports, canals, and other waterways. I want to remind you, I wrote that in June 2025, before the Straits of Hormuz were discussed being blockaded. So August 10th sees a resolution to events that started in August of 2025. It could be a memorial or a court case concludes or both. I have Charlie Kirk in question mark. Big economic news could do with the tech industry, AI regulations or regulatory bodies. Nationalists could face opposition globally. Could see a prominent female figure in the news or rise to a stronger position. And a prominent female figure could be political or business or just somebody who's, taking another step or getting more attention. We could see big tropical storm, hurricane, or windstorm of some kind that causes a large amount of property damage between August 11th and the 16th. Lots of wind, transportation delays, and issues with airspace. Those issues with airspace could also be due to wars or hacking. August 20th is a day of significance, could be natural events or international convention or agreements or a ceasefire of some kind. End of August could see a lot of issues with computers, tech, chips, motherboards, graphic cards, and cryptocurrency. Could see a leader or politician or CEO removed, assassinated, or voted out, and no confidence votes possible. And that's in countries where no confidence votes happen. If you want my full commentary on that, go over to the Patreon. You can check that out. The big idea for August is direct the narrative. Okay, so beliefs shape behavior by choice. That's what you want to do. You want to choose the narrative of your life story. So you want to observe the stories that arise around money, resources, and your value, because the stories you tell make all the difference in how you build forward. Identify where you default to control or avoidance. So if you have to control all the things around you and you feel like a crazy person, if you don't have control, you need to work on that. Or if you avoid problems, that's something it's an either or. And then replace narratives or stories with observable reality. You want to narrate your present moment through August because the energy is wild. Okay. It's just wild. And I think a lot of people, I just saw a Reddit alert saying in advanced astrology, because I do keep tabs on what other people say out in the world. And they were like, did astrologers overhype 2026? I'm like, no, you're in adrenal fatigue. We are so used to the crazy sauce that's happening right now that we're becoming numb to it. It's like, oh yeah, another bomb. Oh yeah, well, the world's on fire, another forest fire, the air quality sucks, there's poop lettuce, it's all a little bit crazy. And in order to deal with it, I think we're all just kind of burned out from it. And what we want to do is look at our strengths. We want to look at what we're capable of doing. Some people have more capability. Other people have a narrower field. You want to team up with people who complement you as you go forward. The things you really need to be ready for August is be open to hearing evidence-based claims. Don't just take people's words for it. They need to be able to back it up. So just like at the beginning of the podcast, I said, hey, the nodes haven't switched into Aquarius for me because I use the mean node. This is why I wrote an article about it. You can read about the difference and you can test it out. If people can't back up what they're saying, trust me, bro, is not enough. Okay. Trust me, brah, is not going to be it. Know the difference between strong opinions and facts. Facts you can check. Opinions are like noses. Everybody's got one. They all smell. Okay. Understand how to find credible references and sources. And let me tell you, it's not as easy to Google search anymore. They've got that damn AI thing going and, God knows the accuracy. So you're going to have to dig a little deeper. You're going to have to check things out for yourself. That's one of the things we do in our community. When somebody asks a question, we come in, we answer it. And not just me, our community members. We have such amazing people from every walk of life. It's such a beautiful, diverse space. Sorry, we're woke. If you don't like woke, don't hang out with us. Don't just believe people in the public eye at face value, regardless of the side of the aisle they're on. Okay. It's not just one side that is singing silly songs. You want to watch their actions. How are they voting? How are they showing up? What have they invested in? How are they doing things? Pay attention to the actions. And, what have they done and accomplished? We need to vet people better. And then be comfortable with being outside of your comfort zone. Okay. We don't have a comfort zone right now, but we can create more ease for ourselves through life practices. And there is not one size fits all. Okay. Not one size fits all. I was talking about in a TikTok, I think like a week ago, I was like, hey, this is, last week's energy, Mercury station direct. Saturn was going retrograde and we got the full moon coming up this week. And I was saying how to move through it. And I talked about that last week on the podcast. You can check out that episode. And somebody was like, what signs? And I'm like, it's not about signs. It's about everybody. Your signs will show, your placements will show how you approach those very issues. Okay. It isn't one sign gets it harder than another sign. It isn't that the universe is picking and choosing who it's going to torture this month. That's not it. Every single person is experiencing massive systemic change at the same time. Your placements show how you manage through that. It shows how you meet your obstacles. where you build resiliency, where you clutch your pearls, where you lay down and have a cry in the fetal position. And guess what? We all do. Okay. But when I'm talking about the bigger energy at play, it isn't about who's going to do worse or better as far as by the signs. I said who will manage better? The people who are solution oriented. And how you find solutions is designed like straight into your chart. Okay. The reason why we become problem pickers is because we have been trained to do that in society. We have been trained to do that in school. You know, what needs improvement instead of what are your strengths? Can you build on? We've been trained by bad managers who are always giving constructive criticism and assigning tasks that don't meet our skill sets. You know, our society has been built on oppressive narratives. And so we are quick to point at the problem. Anybody can see a problem. It takes a mind that is focused on solving issues. Look for the solutions. And we train our minds for that. Not everybody, some people are born with more proclivity to that. They're harder to socialize. Okay. But almost all of us were trained to look at the problem first instead of seek solutions. And I have been saying, and I brought up that live stream I did back in 2021. I had just hit 20,000 followers on TikTok. And which is a lot of people. Don't get me wrong. I was over the moon. I was like, what the hell? That's crazy sauce. But it's also a little awkward. I was like, wow, it was the first time I was using a piece of software to stream in two places. And I was like, I've been saying forever and a day to get through this time period that we're in now into the future. We have to act local. We have to only focus on what is within our locus of control. Okay. And it doesn't mean we don't lobby at a higher level. Doesn't mean we don't reach out to our elected officials. We do. We do. That's something we can do, but we really want to be involved as locally as possible. So you still want to have your leafy greens. You can sprout things in a jar. You can have little hydroponic systems. If you can't afford that, you can get pots at a thrift store and a little bit of potting soil. And you can go to the Dollar General and grab some seeds for $1. You can grow lettuce indoors. Okay. You can grow arugula. Arugula grows like a weed. Okay. Depending. If you don't have any light, like if you're in New York City and you're in an apartment with no light, you might need a grow light. Okay. You might, but in general, those have come down in price as well. So there are lots of ways. You can join a community garden. You can join a CSA. You can find farmer stands if you have access to that. Farmers markets can be a little spendy, but if you shop smart, you can do that. There's lots of ways to do this. Does it take effort? Yes. Guess what? Everything is going to require effort as we move forward. August is a spicy month, but I got you guys. I got you guys in the community. I've got you guys here in the podcast. Let's do the Ralph report next. And then we'll do some community news and some Q&A. Ralph is my archivist. I really love being able to say I have an archivist because, to be fair, I don't remember half of the things I say in predictions on the weekly. I do about 500 predictions a month and, anywhere from like 375 to 500. It depends on what's going on astrologically. And I just did the What's in the Headline recording for the predictions with our magazine subscribers. That goes out on Tuesdays to supporters of the podcast at the $5 level and our grandfathered tier. Yeah. And we do it as a live stream now. because it's more fun for me to have the interaction, and I make sure that the predictions are at the top of it and any of the chit chat or discussion happens after that. So you don't have to listen to the whole thing if you don't want. But yeah, so what did I get right for the predictions for the week of July 20th through the 26th? We've got July 18th through the 21st. I had high profile court case or issue with international court warrants. Andrew and Tristan Tate were arrested in Miami, and a judge says Paramount and Warner must halt merger for at least 2 weeks, granting the state's request. July 21st to the 23rd, cold case solved. There were two. A Springfield cold case solved. DNA named suspect in a 1995 killing. And Pan Am's Clipper Endeavor found 74 years after plane crash that killed 52 people. So there we go. There's some closure for anybody left around who remembers it or anybody who was impacted by that. July 23rd through the 26th, I had wildfires, bushfires, urban fires, and arsons out of control, big fires, U.S. and Europe especially. And of course, hundreds of thousands flee fires as they rage in Spain and France. That's just tragic. Okay, so there's been more and more wildfires in the Iberian Peninsula over the last few years, and France, it's just they're getting ready to evacuate Bordeaux as last I checked. I mean, that's just they have 1.2 million people there. That's just insane. And then the people who don't believe in climate change. Are you kidding? If you didn't notice that the world's on fire right now and nobody's talking about the fires in Africa, and I mean, a good part of that continent is on fire. I mean, there was Tunisia, okay, and then down into central, across the, equatorial Africa. Madagascar has fires raging. This is insane, just insane. Then I also had science reports on coral reefs, acidification of the ocean, phytoplankton decrease or issues with currents, and law of the sea in quotation marks. A Great Barrier Reef microbiome map as researchers discover 500 bacterial species previously unknown to science. That's kind of cool. And then from the year ahead that I wrote in 2025 for 2026, from the 19th to the 28th, we could see big fires, wildfires, arsons, a lot of tea being spilled, tons of drama and surprises in political races. So we had Spain, France battle with wildfires. Wildfire near Albany prompts a level 2 evacuation order, and Democrats nominate Troy Jackson to replace Graham Plattner in a must-win Maine Senate race. And that's what we've got from last week. Woo! Let me tell you. I don't do bingo cards for my predictions. I used to, but I always feel bad because I'm like, these mundane predictions aren't very fun. However, one of my favorites, and I talked about it last week on the podcast, was a new species of monkey was discovered, and I had new species discovered. So I like those. The cattle prod came in as well. That was a little sad. Misuse of a cattle prod. That came in last week. But it's the little arcane, weird predictions that are the ones that I'm like, really? That okay. So what am I like? What am I like? It's just proving accuracy, my friends, because I want to be able to work with people to help them grow and build. That's the mundane. What do you do on the individual level? Well, again, you really want to craft your story and your narrative. We'll be working on that a lot in the Awake space. And if you're in the astrology crew, we wound up natal aspects. We did Saturn through Pluto on Sunday. It was a busy day today. And we're going to start on transits, learning all about transits to the natal chart in August. The horoscopes are done. I look forward to releasing your sneak peek on August 1st in the evening. And then I've got, and the horoscopes, they're not what you think. if you've ever wondered, like, why would I sign up for $15 a month for horoscopes? Let me read from the July magazine. I'm just going to pick one at random. We're in Leo season now, so I'm just going to pick. By the way, I also got up the cover preview. Got up the cover preview here. I'm going to do Leo rising. Okay. So yes, I write my horoscopes for the rising signs because I'm looking at all the different transits happening. Okay. All the different transits happening. I'll read what was for Leo rising from the July magazine. You can hear it's based off the work that's in Living by Luna and in Healing the Money One, the books I've written. Living by Luna will be out hopefully in August. I have to build some websites and I have changed the platform I'm working on. It was just too much to do the other. And I went back to WooCommerce and I've got some fun stuff, and the community members will see it first. They'll see the new website. There's some really cool interactive stuff that I was working on a different project years ago. Put it down because I didn't have time, because, reading and teaching, you only have so much time in a day, right? And so going back to that, I am reading in August. I will open up some more slots in August because I know you guys are chomping at the bit. I'll talk about that in a minute. But anyway, let's read the Leo rising horoscope for July 2026. We're almost done with the month. If you've got a Leo rising or a late Cancer rising, okay, because it's based on what transits are happening through the natal chart houses. All right. So the theme is attract, don't chase. Activated houses. This month highlights your first house of identity, 12th house to rest and reflection, and the 11th house of networking and collaboration. This is where your energy is being asked to prepare behind the scenes while stepping into a bigger future. You might notice a growing sense that you're ready for a new chapter. More invitations through friends, groups, or your community, a need for extra rest even while life speeds up, old dreams resurfacing with a fresh sense of possibility. This is information, not a directive. So just because you're feeling those are things to notice, pay attention to, but you don't have to follow the feelings, okay? They're giving you information about what's going on inside and how you're responding or reacting to life. When you're in your instinctual pattern, when you're under pressure, when you're more, under the gun or stressed out, when these arenas are active, your instinct may be to stay busy so you don't have to slow down. Say yes to every opportunity. You got that FOMO going on. Feel like you should already have everything figured out. This often shows up when you're standing on the edge of change. So kind of wanted to slow your roll and not overwhelm yourself in July. Your deliberate choice, aligned use of energy. Again, when I talk about the 3 layers of consciousness, the aligned use of energy is your deliberate consciousness. Protect your energy as carefully as your calendar. Choose collaborators who genuinely inspire you, not just ones who speak well, but people who are doing the do and inviting you into the process. And trust that quiet preparation is still progress. It doesn't have to be flashy, Leo rising. Okay. The spotlight is warming up and you don't have to rush onto the stage before the curtain rises. And then your prompt is, where am I trying to force the next chapter instead of preparing for it with intention? And then we also have the full moon and new moon information. And if that's there, the full moon in Aquarius for July 29th. This full moon lights up your relationship sector. A partner reaches an important turning point. You can clearly see where mutual effort exists and where it doesn't. Honest conversations now strengthen healthy relationships and clarify the rest. You can only converse so much, right? So if somebody's not willing to listen and you've talked till you're blue in the face, you should be pretty clear with this one. So every single rising sign gets their horoscope in that same format every single month. And it is just a great way to touch base and have a reference to work through things. I love writing these, and the goal is to help people use your natural energy to your advantage, right? It's not to disempower. It is rare that I ever tell anybody to just stay in bed. Once in a while, I'll see some trances. I'll be like, oh man, everybody just put, put on your favorite binge watching show and ignore that day. But that's a rare one. That's a rare one. Rarely do I say that. So that's what's up on deck. You can check out the cover reveal. We've got every month I write articles and I'm writing on retrograde. What's the real story with retrogrades? Because there's so much misinformation and people speak with all the confidence in the world when they don't know what they're talking about online. So there's a few that do. Astro Blitz, as you get on TikTok. He did a great video the other day about Saturn retrograde, and in his comments, I was like, "Yes, my Astro brother. Yes, yes, thank you. We got to stick together, I tell you." Because the amount of make it fit is wild. You're like, wow, you have never read a book on astrology. It's an academic field, people. It's academic. Although I figured out some fun ways to teach it. I've been racking my brains of how do I make this more fun, more engaging, not just a lecture series. Like in Astrology Crew, my lectures are actually the transcripts are leading to a book. Okay. The transcripts are kind of my outline for the book, and we'll clean it up. I'll fill it in, and we'll get a woke astrology book out there with interpretations that aren't peppered with patriarchy. Um, I'm looking forward to that. That's a life's work that's coming at people. So, but Astrology Crew will have access to the new classes that are really hands-on and really fun, where we dive into chart reading and note taking, and is going to be super fun, super fun. So, all right, that was the Ralph report and what's going on. Yeah. So let's get some Q&A from the community. One of the reasons of kind of changed format here is I've been paying attention. People want guidance. I know a lot of people were mad when I moved my predictions back behind into Patreon. And I've done a lot of reflection. I am still keeping what's in the headlines and the live stream as a patron benefit for the magazine tier. But I will be giving more information here because I know you want guidance. Okay. I know the other stuff I teach is exactly what's needed for the energetical moment here. But I have years of study and years of looking at the astrology and how can I prepare people. And for a lot of people, you're just now seeing it, and I got to build a bridge. I got to build a bridge. It was a little also like Leonard Nimoy, the guy who played Spock in the original Star Trek. In the 1970s, he wrote a book, and because he was a classically trained actor, he was like, I am not Spock. And then in the 90s, he wrote, I Am Spock. And I kind of felt like that, like I was like, well, I do predictions. Yes. And that is not the scope of my life's work. My scope of my life's work is to help equip people with the knowledge. Astrology has been my laboratory and my library, but my laboratory for creating frameworks that help people build fulfilling lives, even in the midst of systemic change, massive systemic change. But we can bridge that. Okay. So I pay attention. I'm always observant. And when I'm not giving the astrological configurations, it doesn't mean I'm not giving you the astrology. It's translated. So there's that. Alrighty. Let's take a look what's hanging on in the Patreon. And by the way, until July 31st, new members save 50%. If you want to just support the podcast, you could join at the $5 level for the year. You save 50% on that, If you want the magazine every single month with all the juicy articles, there you go. I'm also explaining the difference between mundane energy and personal energy this month's magazine. Questions. Megan's asking this. What does it mean to be in shadow? And is it a good thing? So the shadow is neither good or bad. When we say like Mercury is in its shadow or Neptune's in its shadow, or it is the shadow phase of the retrograde. Okay. So shadow, people misunderstand the word shadow. They also misunderstand it in shadow work. And it was actually never part of witchcraft. It was Jungian psychology. And it is when you see things, you don't dive into the shadow, by the way, because shadows can't exist without light. Shadows are not opaque. They are see-through. Okay. Are things that are harder for us to see inside of ourselves. So if you look at like the dark side of the moon, it's hard to see because it's never facing us. But it doesn't mean, like I always say, virtue is one of our greatest shadows because that need to be seen as a good person is often leading to oppressive decisions. That's more metaphysics. In astrology, it's part of an astronomical process. And all it means is that the planet that was retrograde is now retracing its steps back through the same path it traversed in the retrograde. And you're getting another way to view it. Once it's out of shadow, it's in its new, full direction. It's covering new ground. So we're just going back over old ground. That is all that means. So it's not bad. People misunderstand the term and they run with it, because it makes great for clicks. Camillo is asking, my questions would be around discernment. There's so much spiritual information and people talking about spirituality. There's a new topic like gene key, but I feel it's fake. But I'm not sure. What other tools would you use to create better discernment in someone's journey? Well, I believe skepticism is always necessary. Okay. So I did look at the gene keys and it looks like somebody translated like Hellenist astrology into something because they require your birth date, your hour. And I'm not a fan of Hellenism, especially as it's practiced in the 21st century because it's not the traditional answer everybody thinks it is. It had some good marketing. That's all I can say. I think when you look at any process, you need to be skeptical and test it out. Don't just jump in looking for a magic bullet for your process. A lot of what is called spirituality is actually pseudo-psychology, including in astrological spaces. Okay. And it's important to, again, test it out, be observing, ask questions. I did not intend to become an astrologer. When astrology was thrown at me, basically in 1995, I said, well, I don't believe in hokum bunkum. I will disprove this. I'm not into superstition. I think it's also important if you were raised in a religious community or a religious household, regardless of what religion, and you are moving forward or evolving, you need to question everything. There needs to be a lot of deconstruction. Just leaving a building is not deconstruction. I see this happen a lot, like on Witch Talk. People have left the evangelical church and they adopt a deity. You don't need to do deity worship to be a witch. In fact, a lot of witches I knew, or people who did magic would be like, what are they talking about? You don't need to. That is basically just chasing beliefs. Like, where's the right God? Where's the right goddess? Instead of like, what's my connection? I think being thoughtful. In my own work, in the test lab, the work where we ask questions. How do I feel in my body about this? Is my mind racing? What stories am I telling myself? Where do I not feel any power? I think being very introspective, and not in a way to punish ourselves, but in a way to safeguard what we're doing. Because the other thing I see a lot of, regardless of what tools are being used, is people like to do their confessions of how they were wrong. And I'm like, we don't need to do the confessional in front of the congregation, folks. We can just admit to ourselves, like, oh, I see where that is parallel to this other experience. What if I did it differently? Instead of beating ourselves up. So I hope that helped. If you have more questions, feel free to follow up. When and where do some of us feel different transits on a collective and or personal level in the body? Do certain astrological events have effects on this? So yeah, actually, lunar transits are something you can notice, and it's going to be different for everybody depending on your chart. That's something that you'll notice in the living by Luna process. I'm so excited about it. So lunar transits are a big one. It's depending on when they're changing signs, what house it's moving through, what parts of your chart it's aspecting. You tend to feel those. It can be any time, like it bodily, like health wise, obviously 6th house transits, 12th house transits, things like that. By the way, the orange one is not going to be feeling good this week, especially with that full moon. If you want to know my thoughts on what might happen, you can check that out in our community. I'll put a post to that live stream where I went through the astrology. A wistful mauve. Can you talk about the significance of Jupiter being in Leo for the next year and what that means collectively and individually? And then they brought up that they have a midheaven in Leo, and there's a lot of blah, 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 big year for career, blah, blah, blah. Yes, me too. I have Jupiter in my 9th house right now transiting, but it will cross my Leo midheaven. My response is, and this was my response to Wistful Mom, I think the better answer is discussing the 10th house. Okay, so the 10th house isn't really career, it's your reputation and your calling. What you get paid to do is a 6th house matter. That's your occupation. And I'm not just the only astrologer who says this. Robert Hand had a whole workshop on this, on vocational astrology. And he framed it this way. He said the 6th house is your occupation and your 10th house is your avocation. And avocation is like a calling, and it's the thing you're always gonna do. So Jupiter is the great magnifier, and whatever house it's in, it's just gonna magnify the theme of that house. Okay. It's just going to magnify the theme of that house. And depending on what aspects it's making, we are going to crystal clarity. Okay. We do make our own success. So as I'm assuming you're a Scorpio rising, you might be a Sag rising, but they always say the same thing. You're like we make our own success. We do. Jupiter moving through your 10th house does not initially give you like perfect luck in the public eye. You're just highly visible. Highly visible. If you guys remember the conversation I had with my brother where he was like, I didn't worry about getting in trouble because I just got into trouble. Well, he has a 10th house sun. He couldn't hide if he wanted to. So 10th house is just your visibility. It isn't always fame. It isn't always glory. And it can very much be your calling. And so it's about getting clear on, what would you do for free? It's not even about the money. What you do for a day job is what pays you. And if you look at your 2nd house and in my Healing the Money Wound work, I kind of translated all of this into plain English. You don't really see the astrology because I found the astrology confused the matter. And what I'm hoping people do is are able to build sustaining lives, right? But the 2nd house will tell you what people be willing to pay you for, so. And then how do you show up publicly is like the 10th house. Really good book that's not astrological on that matter is How the World Sees You by Sally Hogshead. I know she's got a funny name, but she is like a Hall of Fame speaker. She's an advertising maven, like big companies bring her in. She redid the Aflac Ducks reputation, just saying. Her book, How the World Sees You, it came out in 2013, but it is phenomenal. And when I first was introduced to her work, I was like, oh my God, she's talking about the 10th house. She doesn't even know it. She's not an astrologer, but I was like, this explains it better than any astrology book I've ever seen. So, but there, yeah. So we got that. When is he gonna keel over? And that's a joke from Alicia, my assistant, because I get asked that a million times a day. Again, you can't tell from somebody's individual chart, but I will say this full moon ain't helping his longevity. It doesn't mean it keels him over. Okay. Does not, but it ain't helping. If you want to know my full thoughts on that, you can check it out in my Patreon. And she rightly rebuked herself. Alicia asked, how will Neptune and Aries impact the television industry? And I find it really interesting because Neptune in Aries is really, it's self-oriented. It's in Aries. So I think we're going to see more people creating their own media companies. I think we're already seeing that in like TikTok and micro influencers, and we're in the attention economy. It really isn't social. It's about grabbing people and shared interests. You could have no followers and have a viral video and grow and blow up and sell stuff and make a living. For artists, I think you're going to see more independent artists. Kirby is a good example. Her music is phenomenal. James the Seventh, a really wild and wonderful young woman. Her music is just funky and fantastic. I somehow ended up on the emerging artist side of TikTok, and I get to these people before they're big. King Corso, he's another one. He's got a tour coming up. Just phenomenal. And I do have an interesting taste in music, so I'm often drawn to indies. So there's that. So I think we will see, I think all great institutions, big, and by great, I mean large. And that includes, the film industry. I think you'll see things get broken up eventually. And I think you'll see things going back to smaller, interest driven, less of the franchise stuff. I think we'll get more creative work in because it's easier than ever to do it. So yeah. And it's interesting because the last time we had Neptune in a fire sign, Star Wars was created. It was cutting edge for its time. So I think we'll see things like that. It came out of, kind of untested waters. And then J Mint Fresh. I want to know the astrology of the DSA. Will they be the change for the USA? I will be answering this in a patron only podcast. What I will say here right now, what I found really interesting, because I don't have a time, but it's pretty easy to guess. Most organizational charts are really between 11 and 1 p.m. Sometimes as far into 3 p.m. And the DSA came around in 1982, I believe. I don't have the chart up in front of me as I record this. But anyway, because it merged two different organizations. But their Venus sits on the U.S. Constitution's Pluto at 14 degrees of Aquarius. And I thought that was fascinating. Fascinating enough that I will do an entire patron only on some of your questions and go a little deeper and look at the DSA and some other things. So if you have access to the Q&A chat in the Awake space, start asking some questions in there. I know a couple of people have asked me about the SAVE Act and the merger between Israel and military resources with the U.S. So far, the Senate has not allowed it to be part of their reconciliation bill. It's not an automatic pass. And I thought it was interesting. I looked up what my senators in Wyoming, and they are not supporting that. So I thought that was interesting. So we'll do the political stuff for a patron only. But thank you for asking that question. And then what is the best way? This is wearily witchy. What is the best way to hold consciousness from now until the end of the year. Meditation, connecting with others, holding space. Really good question. I think if we do short meditations, like if we start our day in the most positive framework we can, I think building kind of a framework, since we have Saturn and Aries, right? Even with the retrograde, Saturn still rules authority, still rules structure, still rules organization, right? I think the best way to kind of manage through from now to the end of the year is try to start your day on the most positive note you can every single day. And just a 5 to 10 minute quiet time, not letting your thoughts race. So one of the ways you can do that is listen to a guided meditation. You can just tune in to a fan or an air conditioner, a sound, focus on your breathing. I found I had a very busy brain as a young woman, and I was like, I can't meditate. When I learned to count my breathing, in, one, out, two, in, two, out, three, however you want to count it. That was a way to just stay focused and not let my brain take off with me. But, if you're focusing on any physical task, getting into the garden, doing crochet, washing dishes, folding laundry. That's why running is such a heady event for people, because running is a form of meditation. Walking is a form of meditation. Allowing your brain to have some quiet. And if you have a busy brain, that's double important. But you don't have to meditate for hours. Okay, you don't. We're not trying to disembody, we're trying to be embodied. If connecting with others is not overstimulating, then absolutely, but being selective in who we choose to connect with, okay? If you're good at holding space or creating space, for me, it is grounding. So if I have a crazy day, I'll often go live spontaneously, because coming in to be of service and support other people, and knowing that, I'll look at the headlines for the day and I'll be like, my God, today was nuts. And maybe I felt a little agitated in the day, or maybe I have some worries. I've got elderly parents. My daughter hasn't been well, and she's not in the States right now. And I'm like, do I have to fly? How do I support my daughter, and how do I take care of my parents? And my dog is old, and their dog might be sick, and we've got a lot going on, and it's like, so I try to stay as present as possible. Like, well, what's in front of me right now? Well, right now I'm recording the podcast. I'm being of service. How does my body feel? Really good, actually. So for some people, it is going to be holding space. For others, it might be getting more support. There's nothing wrong with therapy, right? Maybe you have questions and you need to get a consultation with somebody, like whether it's an astrologer or a psychic or a numerologist or there's all of that. So, but yeah. And remember, as a member of the Awake Space, you get access to my guided meditations, including the one where you connect to your guidance. That's my favorite. But there's grounding and calming, and then end your day with ease. When I lay down every night, when I put my head down, or early in the morning, because it's been so damn hot, I haven't been able to sleep at night, even with my fans going. If I turn the AC down to a livable temperature, it freezes my mom out downstairs, so I can't do that. Okay. I'm going to die. Anyway, I won't. I'm exaggerating. But every night, or whenever I go to sleep, I put my head down and I say, I will, regardless of the amount of time I sleep, get all the sleep I need and wake up rested and restored. And I will start my day in a way that is enlivening. Okay. Because it's so easy to wake up with the to-do list in your head, and that's not going to help. You're just scattershotting your energy. And don't tell me you've always been that way and you can't not do it. Well, you tell that story, guess what? That's your story, and you're sticking to it, and that's what's up on deck. So you can change your stories. I know, because I've changed them for me. Okay. Changed them for me. That's the Q&A section. These were all great questions. Don't you guys think? If you liked the Q&A section, can you let us know in a comment on YouTube or on Spotify? And I'll make sure I have all the links to all the different, YouTube, Spotify, Apple. So I share the Spotify link because it's the easiest one because I use creators for Spotify for my hosting. I switched it up, but it didn't work as well. So I went back and frankly, there isn't really too many companies that I'm going to align with business wise, but that's how it is. But anyway, so thank you all. I loved these questions. Keep them coming. Keep them coming. And in the patron only, we'll do the Democratic Socialists of America chart and talk about its connection with the U.S. Constitution. I thought that was fascinating. All right, let's talk about that full moon in Aquarius. I feel like Rover avoiding the monster at the end of the book. It's a doozy. It's a doozy. So get up, take a stretch, come back with your favorite beverage, and we'll hold hands together while we go through that full moon in Aquarius. July 29th. Great. Let's talk about that full moon in Aquarius. But it's not just the full moon in Aquarius. Every month, the moon meets up with Pluto. And it's usually a bit of a bang, depending on what else is going on. Luckily, Pluto is retrograde for this one because for all the people who say retrogrades are bad, when it comes to the outer planets, there is a diminishment of the energy because they're not moving full steam ahead, right? So it's a little restrained. But since Pluto's in Aquarius, when it's retrograde, it has like a top note of Leo. And so as the moon moves to approach it, pretty much from the time the moon moves into Aquarius on July 29th, even late, like almost midnight, at 3:07 a.m., the moon is conjunct Pluto exactly. Given that time of day, given that it is in opposition, but not full yet, but it is still in opposition to the sun and Jupiter, I think we're going to see some big bada booms, and I think they are possibly in the Middle East, so Iran, Saudi. It could also be in Asia. We could see more of those strong winds coming up. They've been really getting hammered by typhoons. And that's a potential. That's a potential. And honestly, we could see some seismic activity. And this is before the full moon. Okay. We could see some seismic activity. New Zealand, I'm looking at you. Australia, Southern Hemisphere in general, Chile, Argentina. We could see ice storms in those places. And that's before the moon is full. That's before the moon is full. So let's progress this chart a little bit. I'm going to take it on hours because the moon isn't full until the moon reaches 6 degrees and 26 minutes. I'm going to go back. I was on hours. I'm going to take this back with minutes. Those of you who are in the wake space in our community, you know what it looks like when I'm progressing things on my chart software and I'm animating. So we're going to get to 6 degrees and about 29 minutes of arc for that full moon. The moon is still conjunct Pluto, and now it's going to be opposite Jupiter right before it's in opposition to the sun. Now, Jupiter is at 6 degrees, 25 minutes. The sun is at 6 degrees, 30 minutes. I rarely talk about the minutes of arc, okay? But remember, every sign has 30 degrees, starting at 0 degrees, 0 minutes, and culminating at 29 degrees, 59 minutes. Okay. When you're looking at something of this magnitude, we're probably going to, like I said, things are probably going to pop off well before the conjunction to Pluto. Like right around midnight. I've got it for Pacific time. So remember, Pacific time is 3 hours behind Eastern. I'm going to make you do the math on that. Okay. Because people on the West Coast always have to do the math for the East Coast. So, and why do I say that? Because I grew up on the West Coast and we always had to know what time it was in the East Coast. East Coast, it's central there. So decenter it. -7 GMT because we're 7 hours on the West Coast, 7 hours behind UK standard or time. So anyway, looking at this, it is stabby. It is bombastic. Not sure it's fantastic. The outer world, it's just big booms. And when I look at this and I look at the time of the full moon, which is 7:34 a.m. Pacific, that is 10:34 a.m. Eastern. There, see, I did it for you. I'm being nice. When I look at this, I see erratic behavior by a leader. Shock of shocks. I'm using a chart set in Los Angeles, and I think Donald Trump's going to do something probably not great. Now, he could also have a slip and a fall. He could have a health crisis because this full moon's happening right in his sixth house. He could remove himself from his job, meaning he could do something so egregious it can't be ignored. But there could be another leader making those decisions. He's got Mars afflicting his sun. Mars and Venus are square during this. It's world-changing energy. And it's the beginning of a new phase of an existing problem because it's early in the sign. I think we can expect lightning strikes of phenomenal proportions, probably in the Pacific Northwest, British Columbia, Alaska. I remember when I lived on Camino Island in Washington State, we had an August storm where we had like 1,000 lightning strikes in like 24 hours. It was the weirdest weather. We'd never had weather like that. It was so unusual. Something like that. Really, I wouldn't hype up a full moon. 90% of the time when people are hyping up a moon and they use the name the Farmer's Almanac has given it or whatever, I'm like, yeah, it's not that big of a deal. This one's a big deal. Just because we have Jupiter magnifying this energy in opposition to Pluto, Jupiter magnifying the energy of the sun, moon opposition. This is bigger energy than any of the eclipses coming up. It's electrifying. We could see electrical accidents if you work in healthcare, and I know a lot of you do. Here's what I want you to watch out for. There's going to be electrocutions. We could see accidents with self-driving vehicles. We could see stabbings, just impalements, electric shocks, lightning, people getting struck by lightning. There's a whole bunch of stuff with this full moon. And I'll go through this in more detail in the awake space. We've got Mercury still in square with Saturn. Glad Saturn is retrograde. Because again, Saturn retrograde, like Pluto retrograde, it's a little diminished, but I think we could see the situation in the Middle East get out of hand, like further out of hand than it already is. There isn't a lot of control. The brakes are off. Okay, the brakes are off. This is very chaotic energy because this full moon is still in trine to Uranus and Gemini as well. And with Mars in square with Venus in square with Mars, that's normally, I wouldn't say there's a negative to that. I wouldn't, because it's creative energy. But given the scope of the rest of this chart, given how it aspects Donald Trump's chart, I think we could see issues with shipping, cargo, rail. I think there's going to be a potential use of a dirty bomb in Iran. There could even be some stuff going on with Russia. There could be leaks, and it could be the leadership that does the leaks. It's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. So we could see leaders fail, die, get injured, be removed politically, and that's global. There's a lot going on around the world. I know we are focused on where we live, but it's a small world after all, my friends. So I expect the unexpected and expect it to be big. Don't think this is going to be quiet energy. It is explosive, my friends. Now, what do you do with that on a personal level? And this is something I'm going to go way in depth because we're well over an hour into the podcast now. I'll go way in depth in the awake space community with this. This is really good energy for shattering limitations. So if you've been working on your deconstruction, if you've been working on decentering patriarchy, if you've been trying to liberate yourself, this is the detonation on the prison bars that sets you free. By the way, we could see a prison escape with this one. We could. It's definitely historic events. It's a little wild. It's a little wild. And this energy, you want to harness it. It will be an act of self-mastery to not be reactive with this. So this is not a day to have important conversations. This is not a day to have one of those we need to talk conversation. Not the day for it. Unless you want to end the relationship, okay? You want to end the relationship, but if there is any chance of violence by the person you're wanting to leave or say goodbye to, I would not do it that day because it's stabby, cut energy, and it will remain that while the moon is in Aquarius. It's wild. It's just wild. So it's a great day to pay attention to what matters to you. What stories are you telling yourself that holds you back? When you think of your limitations, like maybe you don't hear so well, maybe you don't see so well, maybe you're, not as mobile as you want to be, maybe you're not able to read as well as you want to read, or maybe you don't understand tech the way you want to understand tech. Well, this is not the time to reinforce the I can't. This is the time to be like, well, I might not be good at it yet, but I can learn it better. I can take time to expand my understanding of things. It's not a time to hang on to limitations because your world will be rocked hard. Rocked hard. Like, don't hang on to especially if you're older, okay? If you're younger and it's part of your development to go, oh my God, what did I live through? But when you're older, like me, and you're pushing 60, looking back at, my childhood was like this. I'm not saying deny it. I'm not saying whitewash it. I'm saying if that's still the story you use to not try something, not give yourself a shot. You'd be like, well, other people are better at these things. I don't know why I even try. Or no one's ever going to love me because I'm a goober. Or, my parents were mean to me and I didn't learn how to receive love. If you're still using those stories at 55, 56, 57, man, reassess because you've built this whole life. You've done a lot of things people thought you couldn't do. And if you're younger, and I would say 30 and up, this is the time to break free of the pain story because the more you reinforce the pain story, the more you chain yourself to oppressive thinking. Again, I'm not saying don't say it didn't happen, but if you're letting the pain, the rage, the resentment kind of consume you, it ain't hurting anybody but you. Okay. It isn't. And when you're healed, not only can you sleep at night, which is crazy cool, unless it's too hot and muggy, that's a different story. But when you feel tired for real and you can sleep, your brain's healing. The other thing is you can look back and go, yeah, that stuff happened. It's an event. It's as much as an event as you can look back at going out to lunch with your friends and be like, yeah, that happened too. But they don't define who you are. Okay. This is all about liberating agency. I think America may also, we already saw the United Nations Human Rights Commission, France, slapped at us for being against the renewal of the head of that. And I think we're going to have more people slapping at us because again, I think Trump's going to do something pretty stupid. I think it will involve a bomb. It may not. He could just, maybe he'll have a clot. I don't know. The astrology does not give me a movie script. I look at things, I know what each symbol represents in a lot of different directions, and I put it together the best I can with what we've got going on. And so I do think there's issues. It could be Israel gets hit. This isn't great for Netanyahu any more than it is for Trump. I'll take a look at that in the Patron Only podcast when I look at the Democratic Socialists of America, which aren't real socialists. Okay, don't let people scare you. Just don't believe people should starve to death in America. So there's that. Definitely issues in the tech sector with this one, like with big bombshell stuff. I don't think this full moon is good for Elon at all. Probably not good for Peter Thiel either. So we could have news about them. Yeah, it's a little wild and definitely accelerating the fires out there. I'm looking at just not thrilled. I think Pacific Northwest, just be very wary. British Columbia, be very wary. Alaska, be very wary. With that full moon, it's happening again at 7:34 a.m. Stuff could spark off ahead of that, but that's when the moon forms full. And it'll be full for 3.5 days. 3.5 days. So as it goes through the full phase, because the moon phase lasts for 3.5 days, if you're in the Awake Space community, you have access to the moon phase video. Okay. Check that out because I talk about the moon phases and how to use that energy. As we move through the days that follow, you've got the moon in a sextile with Saturn, the moon in a trine with Mars and Gemini. And the moon will be squaring off or not squaring off, sorry, that trine to Mars. But Mars on the 30th is right on top of Donald Trump's sun. It's afflicting his vitality with Venus in his first house. Might be in his second house by that point. I don't have his chart up. But anyway, I gave all my rundown for that in the Awake Space, and I'll put a link in here for that live stream, and you can check it out. So that's the full moon. That's the full moon in Aquarius. And remember, we'll go through that in our community and strategies for how you can use this as liberation, as innovation to find opportunity. But again, if you're a healthcare worker, keep an eye out because people are literally going to put their fingers in light sockets with this one. There's going to be some pretty, how the hell did they do that? Stuff that comes up. It'll be some for the books. All right. Let me wind us up. So I just want you to know, just to reinforce what I was talking about, over the last few years, I've been paying really close attention to what serves our community best. And one of the things I realize is you really don't need more information. You don't need me to be a fire hose. You're seeking clarity. Okay. And I know I've been cranky because I too get overwhelmed and I have a overblown sense of responsibility. So I'm always being cautious because I don't want to overstimulate you. I don't want to screw around with people's mental health. We're already all overstimulated. But I also didn't just want to be known for my predictions because I've written life-changing courses, life-changing work, ways for people to navigate this time, to build the skills and build the understanding. Kind of like I said earlier, I'm not Spock, but I am Spock. So many of you, you tune in because you want to know what's happening, what's changing, what to pay attention to. And, that's a good reason to tune in. And I've done this professionally for so long, and it's something that I do love. So I'm going to continue giving you a look at the energy ahead, but I don't want to overwhelm you, right? And so we're not going to do the predictions like what's in the headlines here. That's still part of the benefit of being in the community. But I will let you know what's coming, what's important, what deserves your attention. If you're looking for something deeper or how you can really work with the energy, then that's what we've got going on in the Awake Space community in the Patreon. So I'm giving you the map here inside Patreon. We're going to walk together. And then I'm building out laurieriVers.com. I had to change the platform I'm using. I'm going to just own my own real estate, and I'm building it myself. I may take some people up on some help. I've been offered some help and I might take people up on it, but I'm just going to put everything under one banner, and that's laurieriVers.com. And we'll have the podcast and my workshops, Living by Luna, that journal. By the way, members find out about it first. It is just a life-changing process that really helps you not only understand yourself, but understand how you operate in the world in your own rhythm. It's powerful. And you'll get to watch me grow in real time. Because, I'm not going to finish all of it. Healing the Money Wound will be there. And I've got some fun treats that make it kind of fun to check into the website. So, if you want to support this podcast, there is a membership for that. And you save on the year right now through July 31st. You save 50% as a new member. And if you want deeper content and deeper savings on classes or readings with me, consultations with me, or the other astrologers under me, and all of that's going to move over to my home base. I've got room for you there too. And if you want to study astrology with me, there's so much good stuff coming up. Astrology Crew is where we do that together. We just finished up aspects in the natal chart. We'll be heading into transits. That's super exciting. And I'm really excited about the interactive workshops I'll be offering. That Astrology Crew will get a special access to. Very excited about what's coming up this fall. And so if you've been thinking about it or being on the fence or wondering, exactly what happens there's a lot that happens. And I go live a lot in there as well, both as a support and just check-ins and building community, as well as weighing important world events. I'm sure the day of the full moon, I'll be going live. But August is a beautiful time to do it because we're starting to build forward in not a new direction, but a clearer direction. So I want to thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. As I always say, without you, there is no me. And I'll see you next week.